Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Number 2, Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Sharief, Ishaq, 25 minutes from right now. Talking some New Orleans Saints. LSU's got some players that have been given all SEC honors by the league's coaches. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to start talking about LSU and Baylor today. I have been candid about this since really LSU got off the field against Purdue a couple of years ago. There was a time where I really looked forward to LSU's bowl game. You got to play a different team. There was a lot of anticipation that was built up over time because you got used to a game every week and you had to wait a month for the next one. And when LSU played Georgia Tech after the 08 season that didn't go great, I was fired up to be in the Georgia Dome that night to watch that 08 team play one more time. Absolutely geeked to watch LSU play Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl when I was a freshman at LSU. Like that's huge stuff. And I enjoyed bowl games. But when I watched John Trey Kirkland go out there and try to play quarterback against Kansas State, that leaves a scar. And then the next year, Purdue's entire team failed to show up. They had Drew Brees walking around on the sideline. And LSU won by 1,000. And I'm just like, well, who cares? Purdue certainly doesn't. Last year, I was interested in the game, not for the result, but because Garrett Nussmeier was going to start, and I thought that was interesting. And so that gave an angle to be emotionally invested in. But consider what LSU's going to do in this bowl game on New Year's Eve. Your left tackle's not playing. You only have one scholarship tight end left. Mason Taylor's going to the draft. Kamorian Pimpton just went in the portal. So you got Trey'Dez Green, and that's it. Wide receiver, you got Xavier Thomas. You got Aaron Anderson. I don't even know what you have after that. Kyle Parker's hurt. C.J. Daniels is in the portal. Shelton Sampson's in the portal. Landon Ibietta's in the portal. I don't know who's playing wide receiver. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but the point remains. On the defensive side, you're probably not going to have Braden Swinson in the game. We'll see what Savion Jones decides to do. You've lost J.K. Johnson and Zaire Brown to the portal. So you've got Stamps, maybe Zai if he wants to play. But you don't have a lot of corners either. You get the point. Like, you don't really have your team anymore. And you're going to try to cobble it together and find a way to get into tight end sets. You're probably going to dress Bo Bordelon out to go in there and block a little bit. But that's not what LSU's team was. So, like, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time grinding this bowl game. LSU's going to come out of that tunnel, hopefully, I used to be able to say this with confidence, hopefully in the gold helmets and white jerseys and yellow pants. And when they do, you have my attention. But I cannot sell you a bill of goods that says, you got to create some momentum entering the offseason. Come on. Momentum? I don't think so. I don't think Florida State went 2-10 this year because their entire team quit on the Orange Bowl. I think that you're just going to play an inconsequential game for 3.5 hours and get on the plane and come back home to Baton Rouge. But we're going to play Baylor. So I'll tell you a little about Baylor, and we'll get deeper into Baylor as the game comes, but just a surface view of what Dave Aranda's team looked like. And candidly, I don't know who's gone in the portal from Baylor. I don't know who's leaving. I don't know who's redshirting. I don't know a lot about Baylor's personnel other than what the stat sheet told me this morning. But I do a piece for LouisianaSports.net called Statistically Speaking. And I just go straight numbers. What do the numbers say you are? No context, just numbers. And I was a little surprised at the numbers for Baylor on both ends. The offense has been pretty good. Baylor's offense has been pretty solid. All these numbers are ranking in the Big 12. So with their peers, second in the Big 12 in scoring offense, third in total offense, and not slanted one way or another. They're sixth in rushing offense and seventh in passing offense. But the most important thing you do is score, and they're second in the Big 12 in scoring. So it's been a solid effort offensively. There's nothing that jumps off the page at you. They don't prioritize time of possession. They're second to last in the Big 12 in that metric, but they do everything else pretty well, include avoiding negative plays, where they're first in the league in the fewest number of tackles for loss allowed by opposing defenses. Got a quarterback in Sawyer Robinson that's had a nice season. They've got a running back in Bryson Washington who went over 1,000 yards, and they've really ramped him up in the last 4 games. He averaged 156 yards per game in the last 4 games. He scored 9 rushing touchdowns over those 4 games. So it's a Baylor offense that's been pretty good this year. Now, Dave Aranda, I think, is one of the best defensive minds in the country. I have never, on either side of the football, been more confident in a coordinator in my entire life watching LSU football than I was when Dave Aranda was down on LSU's sideline. That may be rooted in fact. It may have just been a feeling at the time. I don't know. John Chavis did a heck of a job at LSU. Certainly Joe Brady came in and did a great job. Steve Ensminger was awesome. There was a great year with Gary Croton there. Like, there have been some good coordinators at LSU. Jimbo Fisher did a heck of a job as LSU's offensive coordinator. Will Muschamp did a great job as LSU's defensive coordinator. We know that he was running Nick Saban's defense. But for me personally, when I used to look down from the press box and see Dave's bald head walking the sidelines, I would think he's going to get us figured out on defense. And this Baylor defense has not been that good, really, at anything. 9th in the Big 12 in scoring defense, 10th in total defense, 11th in rushing defense, 11th in passing defense. None of that is very good. The only statistic that I look at in Baylor's defense and we go, that's good, is they're second in the Big 12 in third down conversions allowed. They only allow 35% on that down. But everything else is not very good. They're outside the top 10 in most everything. Now, the bright side to that, if you're Baylor, is that they've been a little bit better the last 2 games. They held Houston and Kansas to a combined 27 points, 17 in one game, 10 in the other. So my guess is that Dave Aranda didn't forget to forget how to coach defense, didn't have issues making adjustments. My sincere thought is that they probably don't have great players on defense. I can't back that up, but I know what Dave Aranda is capable of with good players on defense, and these numbers are not it. So I'm glad for Dave that things have gone really well over the last 2 months. This is a Baylor team that is coming off of a terrible year last year, and this year they started 2-4. They give up the Hail Mary to Colorado. I watched that game after LSU played UCLA, and they lose in just a gut-wrenching fashion in overtime with a Hail Mary that gets them into overtime. And at that point, you're sitting there and get to 2-4 after Iowa State whacks you, and it looks like Dave's going to lose his job because you had a bad year last year. You're 2-4. You just got smoked by Iowa State. It doesn't look good. And they rattle off 6 wins in a row. And that's going to keep him around for another year. And as I said many times, and as I kind of alluded to at the end of hour number 1, everybody that led me on that magic carpet ride in 2019, everybody involved gets my support forever. Everybody. And that very much includes Dave Aranda. So I'm pulling for him to have success at Baylor. I'd prefer it if he lost this game. But he probably would prefer to get this win to finish 7 in a row and try to move into the next season feeling a lot better than they did in September. But that's kind of a look at Baylor. The offense has been good. It's been balanced. It's been productive. The defense has not been as good except for the last 2 games against lesser competition. I don't know that Houston is very good at all. In fact, I know that they're not. And Kansas was good, it felt like, late in the season, but they were awful early in the season. I think they probably ran out of steam after a couple of big-time games in a row. They played Colorado in big game, and it's maybe they just ran out of gas. Jalen Daniels is a heck of a quarterback, but It's just not a Baylor team that's great. I'm curious what kind of attendance will be like. Certainly Houston has got a lot of Baylor fans and a ton of LSU fans in it that don't have to travel to the game. They just have to show up on New Year's Eve in the afternoon and catch a ball game that probably won't cost them a ton. So maybe you get a decent crowd in there, but I can't sell you a bill of goods. This is some sort of monster bowl game or momentum shift for the LSU program. The momentum shift for LSU's program is going to go on over the next 2 weeks. And that is how many players can you pay to get into the transfer portal and come play at LSU. That's the momentum shift for LSU's program, not the Texas Bowl. But we'll break down Baylor a little further when we get closer to things. That was just an initial look. If you'd like to look at all the statistics that Baylor's got and are curious kind of how I arrived at some of these numbers, you can do so at LouisianaSports.net. The piece is called Statistically Speaking, a first look at Baylor. Speaking of LouisianaSports.net, tons of stuff up on the site right now. Got a breakdown of Kamorian Pimpton leaving. Got a couple of targets that LSU may be looking at in the transfer portal. Saints signed a veteran quarterback earlier today. And Ben DiNucci, so there's a piece up on that. Pro Football Focus grade the Saints over the Giants. All that is available for free at LouisianaSports.net. If you're driving around listening to me and you're thinking, man, I really like to hear about LSU, the Saints, transfer portal, SEC football, it's all right there at LouisianaSports.net. Go check it out for free on the site today. All right, Sharief Ishaq with us in 15 minutes. When we come back, some LSU players, first team and second team all conference, according to the coaches. We'll tell you who that is. Coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team are fantastic folks, and they're fantastic at what they do, which is make sure that businesses are taken care of in their biggest time of need. When I say insurance, you probably think premium, but there's another side of that coin, and until you've experienced it, it's hard to put yourself in those shoes. But hurricanes happen. Car accidents happen. Cyber attacks happen. Employee lawsuits happen. And when they do, if your policy was bought on the cheap and doesn't have the proper provisions in it, and the coverages in it, the endorsements in it to make sure it responds to one of those issues, you could be in big trouble. And if you're bargain shopping all the time for insurance, that could bring that trouble about. You should trust your insurance broker. If you don't, call the Highland Insurance Group. Call Jonathan Carver and his team. Say, hey, I'd like to take a different approach to this. I'd like you to help me out with my insurance program. They will get you set up. They will get you into an advantageous spot so that if that issue does arise, you're covered and you can continue running your business while they handle the claim situation. It's Highland Insurance Group. You can find them online at HighlandIG.com. If you're looking for a magic bullet just to save that 15%, probably not the phone call to make. If you want to make sure your business is protected, it is. Highland Insurance Group. Find them online. HighlandIG.com.
Hunt Palmer, lover of LSU, Shreveport, and mayonnaise on hot dogs. The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Southeastern Conference, I want to make sure I'm right. It's the coaches, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is the coaches. I want to make sure I was correct there. Southeastern Conference coaches, first, second, third teams are out. LSU had, let me count that up, that is 7 players honored on the first team. Offensive lineman Will Campbell and linebacker Whit Weeks. So good for Whit Weeks being first team all-league. He was in the top 3 in the league in tackles. Every once in a while I would do a pro football focus story for Louisiana Sports.net on Sundays, and his grades were very poor, but sometimes they were really high, and he had a lot of tackles, so I'm glad to see he was recognized there as a first-team all-league player. On the second team, Emory Jones and Braden Swinson, as well as kickoff specialist Aaron Burrell. Well-deserved for him as well. So there's 3 players on the second team. And then the third team, Mason Taylor and Xavier Thomas. If you heard that and you had the reaction of Mason Taylor's third team, I kind of thought the same thing. And I went back and I looked and said, okay, well, who did they have in front of him? Eli Stowers was first. And I don't have a huge problem with that. Eli Stowers is a really good athlete. He's at Vanderbilt, for those that don't know. He was actually a 4-star quarterback out of the state of Texas, and Jimbo Fisher picked him over Jalen Milroe in that class and took him in. He didn't work out at quarterback at Texas A&M, obviously, and he moved on to Vanderbilt where he moved to tight end, and I thought he had a really nice year. I'm okay with that. I realize that it's second team, that Gunnar Helm had a good year at Texas, and I can't claim to have watched all of Gunnar Helm's snaps, but I think that I could make a real case for Mason Taylor in that spot at second team. Either way, Mason Taylor did get third team recognition, along with Xavier Thomas, who was probably helped by the oh no, never mind, that was Aaron Anderson that ran the last kickback. And so that's first, second, and third team. A couple of specialists there for LSU. So if you're looking at the actual first 22 that played on offense and defense, Campbell and Weeks on the first team, Jones and Swenson on the second team, Taylor on the third team. A little bit light there, but that's probably what you would expect from an 8-4 team. Looking at the rest of that first team, for those that are curious, Jackson Dart was the first team quarterback. I would absolutely agree with that. Dylan Sampson, number first team running back. I certainly agree with that. Jarquez Hunter, who's had a really nice career on some pretty bad Auburn teams. Jarquez Hunter was first team as well. Ryan Williams and Luther Burden, that's pretty explosive tandem at wide receiver there for the SEC. I mentioned Eli Stowers. On the offensive line, Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, then Tyler Booker from Alabama, and Tate Rutledge from Georgia. Cooper Mays is the center, and then Sampson was the all-purpose player on the first team. Defensively, this is interesting because you've got Kyle Kennard from South Carolina, who comes from Georgia Tech. You've got Walter Nolan at Ole Miss, who comes from A&M. You've got Nick Scorton at Texas A&M, who comes from Purdue. You got James Pierce at Tennessee. And then you got Princely Uman-Mielen from Ole Miss, who comes from Florida. So of the defensive line, 4 of your top 5 were transfers in. That's, to me, pretty big deal. Somehow Whit Weeks was also second team? Oh, no, that's first team. Sorry. I'm reading the first team. Yeah, so your first team. You also had a couple transfers on the defensive backfield, and Trey Amos from Alabama, who is at Ole Miss now, is a transfer. The offense on the first team was full of guys that have played their time in one spot. Your Will Campbells and Kelvin Banks and all those guys. The first team defense, though, very much highlighted by some transfers. Quinn Ewers is your second team quarterback. He's a transfer. Rocket Sanders, your second team running back. He's a transfer. Andrew Armstrong, wide receiver, transfer. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Auburn, transfer. So you look at this, Caden Proctor from Alabama is on the second team. He's kind of a transfer. He transferred from Alabama to Iowa and then back to Alabama before he played a game. But I point that out because I think probably because I spend a lot more time looking over statistics and listening to podcasts from other teams than most of my listeners do. I think I'm probably familiar with more players on other teams than a lot of my listeners. Not all. Some of you are sickos. I get it. But just for perspective, just how many players teams are counting on from the transfer portal. And it's why when the ink dried back last Tuesday or Wednesday on that signing class, I was looking at this going, this is a big deal, but I can't help but think the next 3 weeks are bigger. And maybe that's me being scarred by that 2022 LSU class that's been decimated by the transfer portal. And maybe it's just the reality as I look at the first team all-league selections, and I'm looking across the board at just a ton of guys who have transferred. And some of them have transferred from places like Georgia Tech and Purdue. Some of them have transferred from Texas A&M Commerce, which is where Andrew Armstrong comes from. It's just a mixed bag. You've got to evaluate the transfer portal and hit on the right guys. Ole Miss last year went super high profile. Like Prince Uman-Mielen comes from Florida, and Walter Nolan comes from A&M, and you had Jackson Dart 2 years ago that was from USC, and you've got Trey Amos from Alabama, and you were bringing in former 4-star recruits from high-end programs. But they're not all like that. Like Trey Harris came from Louisiana Tech, and that worked out pretty good. He was best wide receiver in the country when he was healthy. So my sincere concerns about LSU back 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, after you'd lost a couple games in a row, you weren't going to play for a championship. I'm looking at this going, man, you're losing a lot of the guys off your defensive ends. You're losing a lot of guys from the safety position. You're losing a lot of guys at wide receiver. You're losing maybe the entire offensive line save Chester. Now, some of that may change, but you get the point. Like, you were losing a lot. You just got to go restock the shelves. And so I think a lot of times we spend our time in LSU's bubble and we only concern ourselves with, oh my God, CJ Daniels is leaving. Oh my God, Kamorian Pimpton's leaving. Oh my God, Deshaun Womack is leaving. Oh my God, all these players are leaving. Oh my God, the 2022 class is ravaged. And you just focus on your little bubble. And you got to look around and realize, like, everybody's fighting this battle. You just don't know how often guys from Arkansas or Florida are going in the transfer portal. It's just not necessarily on most of y'all's radar. A lot of y'all, if you're on Twitter, you're following Shea Dixon and Matt Moscona and Charles Hannegriff and Jacques Doucet, and you just see all the LSU stuff. Well, you're not following the 3 guys that cover Arkansas and the 5 guys that cover Ole Miss, and you're not following the beat writer from the AJC that covers Georgia. And like, that may not be in your world, and you may not notice that everybody else is losing guys too. LSU is up there. Arkansas is the only team in the league that I know for sure has lost more players. But I look at the players that LSU's lost, and if you can go into the transfer portal and find a few guys, it doesn't feel like upgrading is completely out of the question. In fact, it feels probable in some senses. So it's just a different world. And I promise you this, like, I'm adjusting to it. I'm still trying to grasp how you can judge program health when there's so much turnover. And so when you ask me, like, is Brian Kelly getting the job done? Is there a bright future for LSU? It's just difficult to answer that with any conviction because I just don't have any idea what the team looks like next year. I don't have any earthly idea what the team in 2026 looks like. You can't even do it. So it's hard to sit here and evaluate where the program is. Like, I could look at LSU in 2011 and suggest they were going to churn a ton of guys into the NFL over the next 2 years. You had Ruben Randall and Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham and Jeremy Hill and Zach Mettenberger and Kevin Minner and Barkevius Mingo and Sam Montgomery and Benny Logan and Michael Brockers and Tyrann Mathieu and Morris Claiborne, Eric Reed and Brandon Taylor. And you had, like, I can rattle off that team because they were all there for 3 years and I knew they were going to be there. And you could look at that team coming off the field in 2011 and go, hey, they're still going to be really good on defense next year and we'll see what that offense looks like. And it finally figured out. But then a lot of those guys left in 2012 and the 13 defense wasn't very good. But you heard all those names I just rattled off, and it's been a decade and a half since those guys got to campus, and I can still rattle through them. And I just don't think I have any chance at identifying the 2025 LSU team and what that looked like on paper 5 years from now. It's just going to be difficult for me to go back and, like, do that because it just turns over so quickly. And I think that at times it's healthy to look at the all SEC list and go, hey, all these guys that all these schools had that were good, they found them in the transfer portal too. I just think that it was probably a little bit different dynamic when some of these guys landed than the millions of dollars that are being cast about now. So that's the dynamic. That's the thing we can't account for right now. And we're just going to have to watch over the next week and see how it goes. LSU pulls in 3 commitments in the next 72 hours based on a couple of visits. You can start to go, okay, they may have some of this figured out. If we're here this time next week on Tuesday and LSU hasn't added anybody in the transfer portal, you can start to get nervous. That's as blunt as I can be about it. But not for now. Just kind of look around. If you want to check out that all SEC team, you can see it over to secsports.com. They're all listed right there. All right, let's take a timeout. Come back. Sharief, Ishaq, Talking Saints. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Look, safety is a big deal. When you're buying a new vehicle, you want to be sure that you and your family are safe. And I can promise you this, the entire line of Genesis was given the IIHA top safety pick. Some of them were top safety picks plus. What I can promise you is that every vehicle on the line, sedans all the way through the SUVs, are all outfitted with the same safety features. They don't shortcut anywhere. That's just a promise they make you at Genesis. It's all part of being a Genesis buyer. If you've not given an opportunity, just get on by. They're at Airline near PQ. They're across from Women's Hospital. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you're probably on Airline Highway anyway. Just stop in, say the Hunt Palmer Show sent you in there, and get behind the wheel of a Genesis over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. You can certainly browse the entire selection there. It's genesisofbatonrouge.com.
Welcome back to the Hunt Palmer Show. Here's your host, Hunt, the uniform czar, Palmer. Which uniform do you hate now?
Checking right along here on this Tuesday. It's that time of the week where we head out to the Jim's Firearms Hotline, chat with our guy Sharief, Ishaq, WDSU down in New Orleans, all things Saints and Pels. Sharief, how we doing?
It depends on the day of the week, the team we're talking about, and the weather outside. Okay, gloomy and okay.
It's Tuesday. We're talking about the Saints, and it's a little gloomy. So we'll see how that treats you here for the early portion of this interview. Are you encouraged that the Saints beat the Giants?
Not really. That was the ugliest win. That looked like a Dennis Allen win.
Oh, nice.
It was ugly. Nice if not nice, but it was just not a pretty win. I think the entire team knew that was just ugly. That was a special teams disaster for both teams. I mean, they both looked like they weren't trying to win that game.
You can make the argument the Giants don't want to win that game. I think the Saints are still fighting and scrapping pretty good. My biggest concern was that they didn't really get the ground game going on Sunday. What was your concern in what was an ugly football game?
Yeah, that defensive line is not good. I mean, that defense, the Giants are just absolute garbage, dude. They're not good.
Yep.
For the Saints not to be able to run the ball against them was pretty sad, to be honest with you, considering they had their entire offensive line out there. That was sad. I mean, it truly was sad to watch that type of game against a team that's trying to literally tank and let you beat them, and you only put up 14 points against them. So, not really a good showing by the team.
Have you seen enough flashes from Kendre Miller to feel like he's going to be a contributor at some point?
Yeah, he ran really tough in the yards that they actually got. I mean, I thought that touchdown run was pushing the pile was a nice run. I told you when healthy, he's a nice running back. I mean, he had a nice kickoff return too. So, I mean, he could flash. He has something there, for sure that could be beneficial for the franchise moving forward. But as I always tell you, like a broken record every Tuesday, you got to stay healthy, just like most of these players. I think he's got it. I think he's got something there. But does that mean they're not going to draft another running back? No, they might draft another guy here and there. So, yeah, he's got the talent. Just got to stay on the field.
Derek Carr not going to be on the field, we don't think, coming up on Sunday. Broken left hand for him, but it feels like he's going to try to find a way to return this season. Is that a good idea?
When you look at the money, the guaranteed money of his injury guarantees, if he's fails his physical after the season is $30 million. If I am the Saints, I'm like, I don't care. You're not going out there to play at all. I mean, the Saints are pretty much going to be out of it after the next two games. If they lose these next two games because of what the Falcons and Buccaneers have left, they can win the division easily. But no, I'm not playing him. I know he's going to try to play. He may try to play this week. I mean, you throw a cast and shoot it on the left hand, like a soft cast, and you might be able to go out there and play. But is that smart for both parties? Is it smart for himself and smart for the franchise? No, you don't do it. You don't let him go out there and play.
There's part of me that wants to, admire Derek Carr for the toughness and wanting to go out there and grit through it. But I mean, he did this last year when he was hurt and he couldn't really play, and his play was severely compromised because of it. And he didn't play better until he got healthy later in the season. Do you think he can function with the big cast on his hand?
It's going to be tough. The teams are going to be like headhunting his hand. They're not going to just play easy on him. They're going to go after him. The Commanders are trying to get into the playoffs. They're not sitting here going to lay back and not hit him. I mean, they're going to go after him if he comes out there and plays. I mean, I doubt he plays. I mean, I could be wrong. I just don't see how you're going to go out there and play with a broken left hand. And you could try. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be hard for you to grip the ball. You can shoot it up with anything you want. After a while, that wears off, and once teams start hitting you on it, I mean, how effective are you going to be? You're going to try running the ball the whole time. They're going to stack the box. You're going to try the quick passing game. They're just going to move up the defense a lot in the coverages. It's just, to me, it's just the whole thing's a bad idea. I would not play him the rest of the season. I really would.
Who would you play? Would you play Hainer or Rattler?
I mean, Rattler got his chance to start, but it was almost like an unfair shake because he got a team that was absolutely devastated by injuries.
Yeah.
And then you got Jake Hainer out there, who's been the backup essentially the whole season whenever Carr's the starting quarterback. My gut tells me if Carr doesn't play and shouldn't play, it's probably going to be Jake Hainer. Give him a chance to get a run, and if it doesn't go well against the Commanders, maybe they can move Spencer Rattler and give him a chance against the Packers if Carr doesn't return. So maybe they give each guy a chance since the team is pretty much healthy because they really don't have any weapons outside of Kamara that's been a consistent starter. So I'm going to go with Jake Hainer.
On defense, Brian Brzee stuffed the stat sheet and made the play to block the kick at the end. I feel like he's coming on a little bit here in his second year. What have you made of his performance?
Yeah, he has. I mean, he's come on a lot this year, but in terms of his sack production has gone up. I mean, I told you last year if he had 4 or 5 sacks his rookie year, it'd be nice. I mean, he's getting close to doubling that at this point.
Yeah.
So good. I mean, he's I think close to 7.5 sacks. So I'd say that's a really good season up to the point for Brian Brzee. The blocked field goal was nice, even though that maybe should have been called for a penalty because Peyton Turner was holding the snapper down, so the center down. But the Giants aren't going to complain; they got a loss out of it. So yeah, I think the one thing he needs to work on is his run defense. That's being a defensive tackle, you're supposed to be a guy who's got to be very consistently good at being a run defender, and it's kind of been lacking at times for him. And I think he knows that. One of the things he said during training camp that he had to work on was he had to work on his run defense. So, but in terms of sack production and pressures, yeah, I think he's done a solid job getting back there to get to the quarterback.
What do you make of Sunday's game? Jaden coming to town.
My guy Jaden, what could have been if we had just tanked all of last season. I think he's, man, that game against Titans a couple of weeks ago, he was just running and throwing all over the place. I told you last week, a couple of weeks ago, I thought that the Rams would win the game by a touchdown. I think we're looking at another 7 to 14 point game against the Commanders. Man, look, they got a good defense. I think that Dan Quinn does a good job. I mean, outside of the whole Jaden Daniels talk, I think Jaden will do what he has to do. The Saints have struggled against guys who can move a little bit. I'm assuming they're going to try to run the ball a little bit on the Saints defense, see if they can get some yards on him, and then try to pop the play actions and RPOs on that defense with Jaden. So that's what I would think would be the main factor there for that Saints defense. I mean, it's as simple as that, and I think Dan Quinn will pin his ears back and just go after the quarterback.
We shall see. Saints and Commanders Sunday from the Dome. Let's talk some Pels. Hearing some buzz that there may be some phone calls coming to New Orleans about the availability of Herb Jones. What does that make you think?
Not happening. Herb Jones isn't going anywhere. I think Herb, Trey, and I guess you could say Eve Messi are untouchables, even though they say Zion is one. But if you can get rid of Zion, eat BI and other than CJ, who's done everything they've asked him to do up to this point, that probably can get rid of those 3 guys, they would. But I just don't see Zion going anywhere. But Herb's a no for me. It's a 100% no.
Do you feel like the Pelicans are somewhere near trading a key piece to this nucleus?
Yeah. I mean, that would be it. It would be Brandon Ingram. I mean, I know he's not healthy right now because of the sprained ankle. I think that they're going to have to trade him. I mean, he's not going to be on a contract next year. I'm sure a team who likes to score that can use a guy in the playoffs would be thrilled to have him. I don't know what you're going to get in return. I'm sure he'll be healthy as soon as he goes to another team, and he'll be awesome, just like how most players, leave New Orleans and become awesome. I just think that if you get something good in return, you do it. I mean,
whose situation is more dire right now, the Saints or the Pelicans?
It just feels like with the Pelicans, it's you thought you had all this talent, but it's constantly the same guys getting hurt over and over and over again. And it's a tough one because you need a quarterback to compete. So
yeah,
I say the Saints because they're too old. Roster's not set up to succeed until they rebuild it after the 25 season. So I say the Saints in a bigger in a tougher situation, but at least they know how to navigate it. The Pelicans just haven't been able to navigate 6 years of Zion and Brandon Ingram. So, man, it really is tough. I'll go. I mean, I don't know, man. I'll go with the Saints in a little bit better situation because they navigated.
None of it's super exciting, but we appreciate you checking in here. We'll talk next week, Sharief. Thanks, man.
All right, hon.
Sharief Ishaq, WDSU down in New Orleans. As we mentioned, Jaden Daniels invading the Dome coming up this weekend. We'll come back and close it out. Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, AVSSLA.com is the website. You're looking for a Christmas present for the golfer in your life? How about a golf simulator in the house? If you got room for it, Mitchell Fisher and the team at Audio Video Security Solutions can help you install it. If you have no idea where to even start that process, I got Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number. Just call him. They don't provide it, but he can walk you through step by step how to get that installed at your home, and they are happy to take care of it. His number is 225-439-7920. Again, his name is Mitchell Fisher, 225-439-7920. Give him a call. Get that golf simulator set up in the house. It gets dark so early now. It's been dreary and wet. Got a guy, girl who's a golf addict in the family, wants to deal with that golf simulator inside the house. Audio Video Security Solutions can help you with it start to finish. Check them out on Instagram, AVSS_BR, or online, AVSSLA.com. Audio Video Security Solutions, AVSSLA.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
.104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge and Citizens Bank and Trust are bringing you the ultimate holiday gift with our Home for the Holidays sweepstakes. Imagine 2025 with your holiday gift. Oh, nope. Imagine 2025 with your rent or mortgage covered up to $18,000. We're here to make your holidays a whole lot brighter. Just sign up at 1045ESPN.com and you could be living stress-free next year. The winner will be notified on December 20th. That is next Friday. No comment, Hunt. I don't need it. I don't need it, Hunt.
How would you grade that read?
No comment.
No comment.
That's how I would grade it.
Let's just play Take It or Leave It. Can you read these words? Or are you good?
Okay, that's uncalled for, Hunt. That's uncalled for. All right, first one here. Lane Kiffin gave his thoughts on the current calendar structure for college football, saying, quote, "It really is a dumb system," in reference to the early signing day being a week prior to conference championship games and the transfer portal opening multiple weeks before the season actually ends. You agree with Kiffin? Take it or leave it.
I will take it. I do agree with Lane.
I'll take it.
But I don't have a great solution because these players have to enroll in the school. So if you're going to start classes, right there at the beginning of January, you've got to give players December to consider where they're going to go. I don't have a great answer. If we're going to just let everybody go carte blanche and do whatever the hell you want all the time, which is what we've decided we're going to do, there's never going to be a great time to blow up everyone's roster. You want to have guys in for spring, so they've got to be enrolled in the spring semester, so they've got to look. It is what it is. It's not great. These bowl games are just ridiculous. So I went through to the top of the show, or the top of the hour. Like, LSU's going to go there with one scholarship tight end, no left tackle, half the cornerback depth is gone. They got like 3 wide receivers. It's just, we'll see.
All right, next one here. 2025 consensus number 1 men's basketball prospect AJ Dibansa committed to BYU today. The Cougars getting the top player in 2025. Take it or leave it.
I will take it.
I'll take it.
I like it a lot. You know why I like it a lot?
Because he's not going to an SEC team.
He's not going to Alabama, who was second on his list, which makes me very, very happy. Sorry, Coach Oates. Didn't get the number 1 player. Hate to see that. Go Cougars. Really pulling for you, BYU, for, I guess, the 1 year. Apparently, the reports are that this NIL deal was around $10 million for a year. So, that's pretty significant.
The Mormons got some money up there in Utah. Next one here, ESPN insider Shams Charania named his top 2 potential trade targets for the upcoming trade deadline, one being the Miami Heat's Jimmy Butler, which is interesting, but the other being the Pelicans' Brandon Ingram. The Pels will deal Ingram. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I think that's going to happen. I think that everyone kind of realizes that this did not work. And I've said this multiple times. I'm not backing off it for a second. I don't think it's anybody's fault that it didn't work. I thought that the moves they made and the players they assembled made some sense. It just didn't work. You never stayed healthy, and you never got him out on the floor to create any sort of continuity or rhythm or play in the impactful time of the calendar. They just never got healthy, and that sucks. I don't think it was a disaster. I could look and this is a random example, but I could look at the Chicago Bears. There's a reason they stink. Every time they draft a quarterback, they fire the coach 1 year later and bring in a new coach and a new coordinator, and they rinse and repeat, and nothing they do makes any sense. This actually made some sense. It just didn't work. Those are two different things.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Next one, or last one here at least, Mark Gastineau confronted Brett Favre recently.
Did you see this video?
About his broken sack record. He refused to shake Favre's hand and told him he wanted the record back. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it.
Leave it alone.
I don't know if Mark Gastineau felt better after this. If you haven't seen the video, go search for it on Twitter. He walks up and Favre's at some book signing looking thing or something, and Favre goes to shake his hand and say, "I think we've met," and Gastineau won't shake his hand, and then it's kind of awkward, and Favre's kind of looking at him, and he's like, "You hurt me. You took that sack record away. You took it," and it was just a weird thing. I think Mark Gastineau and his 22 sacks is pretty great accomplishment. I think Favre did take a dive for Strahan. If he wants the sack record back, that's disappointing, but that's not really how it works. So I think it was a little petty after. How was it, 20 years ago?
Yeah, something like that at least.
You gotta let that one lay 20 years later.
Yeah,
You're really ticked off the next Thursday, and then your emotion gets the best of you. Okay, but making a trip to go see Favre to confront him, it was weird. It was a weird deal.
Strange.
And it looked even weirder. I'm not even doing it justice. Go look at the video. It was an awkward encounter. Favre, I think, just kind of walked away, and eventually was like, "All right, thanks, man. See you never." That's it on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Open the show today talking about LSU transfer portal targets. If you want to hear some of the players that are coming in for a visit, or my thoughts on how well they could fit in at LSU, you can go catch that on demand, or also on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. Kendra Miller, has he shown some flashes? I discussed that in hour number 1. Glenn West, go 24/7, talking football and basketball. The top of hour number 2, a first look at the Baylor Bears. What is LSU getting into in this Texas Bowl? And the All-SEC coaches team was released a little earlier, and I talked about that at 2:15 before we got to Sharief. If you missed it, catch it on demand wherever you find your podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, our website, 1045ESPN.com. Or, of course, on YouTube. Reminder, Hoops with Hunt is back on wherever you find your podcasts. We're talking basketball whenever we do. It goes there to Hoops with Hunt. We're going to get out of here. That's all we can do here on this Tuesday. Matt Moscona is going to drive you home next on After Further Review. Have a safe and wonderful Tuesday. We're back tomorrow, same time and same place. Hunt Palmer Show right here on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Neil and Melissa been running things at Boudreaux's Electrical for 40 years. Now their son Justin kind of taking the reins down there in Napoleonville. Every single Generac home standby generator you get from Boudreaux's Electrical Services is going to come with a 7 to 10-year warranty, depending on the type of generator that you select. Every single generator installation is going to be done by a full-time employee, and they're going to use the highest quality in the tubing and wiring. And they're going to do most of that installation underground so that it looks nice as well. But more importantly, it gives you that peace of mind of knowing that the power is not going to go out on you. Whether it's a hurricane, one of those afternoon summer thunder showers we had an ice storm this past year. Also, somebody can just drive off the road and hit the line and knock your power out. That's a nuisance. Protect yourself from that nuisance at Boudreaux's Electrical. You can check them out online, boudreauxelectrical.com, or give them a call, 985-397-1562. That's 985-397-1562. The easy way, as usual, is boudreauxelectrical.com, boudreauxelectrical.com.